know these ones.
What is your name?
Cleo Ralstin.
I remember talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
What year were you born?
1924.
Okay. And where are you from originally?
Otway.
Otway.
You know where Otway is?
Kind of.
That's where Stan Peach's wife was from.
Oh, yeah? Great. Did you grow up your whole life in Otway? And
Near Otway.
near there? All right. And we asked you to come and speak about your experiences with World War II. I understand you have some service that you wanted to talk about, some history in the service you wanted to tell us about.
I don't know how many people remember the draft boards and how they operated, but there were 4 draft boards that took care of Portsmouth City and Scioto County. And I worked on draft board 4 as an assistant clerk.
And just to be clear, that doesn't mean you were not necessarily in any branch of the service, but you were working for them. Okay.
For the Selective Service.
Okay.
And their headquarters was Fort Hays, Columbus. And they had offices in Portsmouth. They had 4.
Great.
I worked in the one that took care of the eastern section of Scioto County. And having lived in the western section of Scioto County, I knew a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not an easy task to see them go off to war.
Definitely.
And a lot of them, when they came back, would stop by the office and chat and tell us some of their experiences. It was nice to hear.
Mm-hmm. How does a person acquire a job like that?
It was civil service.
Mm-hmm. And how did you decide who to contact, who to send? How did the process work?
They had board members on each of those boards.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were 5. On the particular one that I worked with, there was Lewis Malt from New Boston, Fred Semmering from South Webster, Fred Lang from Wheelersburg, Abe Miller from Lucasville. How many did I name?
I think that's 4.
Let's see who the other one was. Fred Semmering, Fred Lang. Did I mention Abe Miller?
Yes.
I think I did. Then. Well, I'm one short because there were 5. But Harold Moulton from Lucasville was the clerk of the particular board that I worked for. And I was his assistant.
Okay. And so, I never lived through any times when that was active. All I know really is the signs in the post office telling people that they need to register for it. So, would you mind explaining a little bit, just really for my sake, what happened to a person when, and how they decided who to contact? And
they reached, when they reached 18 years of age, they had to register, and they could do that at the post office in whatever area they lived in, or they could come to the draft board itself and register. So that was the way they got everybody registered and in the system, as they would say. Mm-hmm. And then those 5 board members met once a month, or more often if needed, and decided what classifications they would be in. Mm-hmm. And depending on classification and the number of men that they were trying to get. And that was before the days of females registering. I don't think they were ever required to register. I'm not sure on that.
No, I think so. I didn't. So if I was supposed to,
and I didn't.
Problems.
And I lived through it.
So once they're in the system, and then how are people classified? You mentioned the classifications.
Well, they have work deferments, such as farmers, if they were good producers, depending on what business they were in, whether they were eligible for a deferment in case they were called. And then they would have to come in and meet with the board and let them know, exactly what their circumstances were, whether they qualified for deferment.
And who decided who would be called? Was that
From the number of people that were registered, the board members would go through all of that material.
Okay.
And make the selections.
Wow. And how long did you work with the draft board?
4 years.
Okay. Wow.
Got married and left.
Oh, all right. You said sometimes people would come back in. What was, and you knew that it was a difficult job that you were doing. What experiences stand out from those 4 years? What were really difficult? What was good?
Oh, if someone got killed,
sure.
That was a registrant from our board. Of course, that upset all of us. And we had several that were.
And you mentioned people coming back in. How, when they would come in for a visit, how did they talk to you? Were they ever upset with you all, or how did those interactions go?
We had a few that were upset, when they got called, and didn't really qualify for any kind of deferment. But not nearly as many as you might think. Most of them were willing to go and proud they had gone, and we were always glad when they were ready to come home.
Oh, sure.
And how people go through these wars that we're in now, I have no idea. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to, but you don't want my opinion, I know that. But I had
All right.
only these two things that I thought you might be interested in looking at. One was I didn't mean to have all that stuff in there.
We'll get it.
Can you see that?
Let's see. Can I kind of help you move it around here?
You're welcome to if you would.
We're gonna flip it up so we can see. Let's
Okay.
see. Can you see it okay? And he's gonna move the camera around a little bit here so you can see better. Okay. And we were looking at the top one right now, and could you explain to us kind of what that is? The certificate?
The certificate was in recognition of being associated with selective service and the years that I worked with him.
Great.
And the letter below it was recognition from Bill Clinton as to the service.
Oh, wow. You see it okay? Okay. That's pretty special to end up with a letter from a president.
Oh, yes. I was excited. Thank you.
You're welcome.
How did the people, for example, living in Scioto County, people that knew you worked with the selective service, I imagine that could be a difficult position to be associated with. Were you ever treated unusually because of the job you had, or?
You know, that was the fortunate part. of my having lived in the western section of the county, I didn't get much of that contact from those in the eastern section.
Oh, sure.
So I heard a lot of complaints really from people in my area that were associated with Draft Ward 3 because they were in charge of that particular area.
Oh, that's a very fortunate thing that you were not. Got it.
So I was out of their territory.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad it didn't get ugly for you.
No, it didn't get ugly.
Good. Did
But I don't know if there are any. I know there's one lady that lives here that used to work on a draft board, and she's over in assisted living, and she was with Draft Board 2. And her name was Miriam Vanini.
See, let me check through my questions here.
Get those easy ones.
Okay. How you mentioned the people that came back in to see you when the soldiers were returning. Did you notice how did most of them come back? Did they? I know
they had to check in with their draft board that had sent them when they came back.
Great. And I don't know, how had they? Was there a particular trend about how they had changed during their time away, or was it just differed from each individual?
Different for each individual.
Let's see. And since you were living and working during that time and knew the county and how it worked, what would you say has changed the most from then to now?
Population. We have lost so many people.
I've heard that. I've heard a couple of people say that there just aren't the people anymore. Some people have mentioned that they thought that was due to the fact that there weren't as many employment opportunities. Do you think that that's true?
And out in our rural area, they have to go to Dayton or Cincinnati or Columbus. And with gas prices what they are now, I don't know how they can afford to go to work, those that have jobs.
Well, I want to make sure I don't cut you off here. Is there anything else that you would really love to say and want to make sure is said?
I don't know. It was not an easy task to go to the bus station and check these fellows off.
Sure.
Or to the train depot. A lot of sadness there. But they did a good job.
Definitely.
And I was, proud to be a part of it.
Sure. Well, we're going to keep these videos and people that come to the library can view them. So is there any sort of life advice or anything that you'd like to give out to people?
Stop these wars.
It's good advice.
That's about the only one I have. I think it is so sad. That's all they have ever known over there, so let them fight. We don't have any business here. That's my soapbox.